Hi, I'm Brian Schroff from Beyondware. We just released version 2.1 of Beyond Typicals. In this new patch, we've got undo and redo, some new cool traffic settings, some new 3D assets, and more. Let's check it out. All right, so you can see we just released version 2.1.0.5. That's listed in my help menu up here. So that's the latest edition as of December 13th, 2022. I'll first start with undo and redo. So you can see we have a new button here in the bottom right of the toolbar that will open a pane that shows the history of changes as we make them in Beyond Typicals. So you'll see I can go ahead and change some lane widths here, and that list over on the right is slowly populating with my changes. It can track maybe deletion of an element. So you can see I've got this list that I can go ahead and click through. So if I wanted to undo all, I can go ahead and click to the top of that list. If I wanted to redo all, I can click at the bottom. And if I wanted to get back anywhere in between, I can click all those buttons. Undo and redo also have buttons here over that clock icon in the bottom right. So I can click undo and redo through there. There's also undo and redo in our edit menu. And I can also press Control Z on my keyboard to undo and Control R to redo. I'll also note that this history is tracked within your phase. So if you have a model open with multiple phases, it will independently track history through each of those phases, which is a super useful tool. So if I were in this existing model and pressing delete, I'm tracking some deleted sections, I can bounce back over to proposed, and I still hold that list of changes that I only made to the proposed model. So I can go ahead and toggle through all those changes I made. I can undo all, pop over to existing, and I've still got my two deletion edits here that I can undo and redo through. One thing important I want to note is that this tracked history is only saving for your current working session. So if I were to go and save this file and quit out of it, let's call this undo, redo example. So if I quit out of it, I can, let's say, start a new blank project and go back to that file. You'll see my tracked history is now cleared out. All my changes are still saved, but the history is no longer available to undo and redo through. That's not unlike any other normal computer programs like Microsoft Word or AutoCAD. Wanted to highlight that's no different here as well. Another new update to Beyond Typicals 2.1 is the auto scaling of 3D grass. So you can see now that when we change the widths of our 3D grass sections, that grass is going to scale with it. So I can make width changes and that 3D grass will change alongside it. That does come with a drawback. One of them is that if you make your grass too large, it will start to look distorted and stretched out, so it won't look quite as realistic. And in that case, I still recommend lining up multiple 3D grass sections next to each other if you need a wider section of grass. But then also what it's going to do for your versions from 2.0 are going to automatically change your grass scale. And I'm going to show you an example of that where you may have to go back to your previous version and make some changes. So in this example project that I created before the 2.1 update, I had taken this 3D grass and changed its y-axis scale to 0.5 because that 3D grass sat perfectly on an 8-foot wide section. I wanted to show it edge to edge on a 4-foot wide, so I scaled it in half. Now that automatically scales, we need to readjust our y-axis manual scaling back to 1, and that 3D grass should go back to its intended size. So there would be some version edits, but these we thought were a minor inconvenience for our users, especially when trading off with the ability to have that grass scale automatically moving forward. We also have a new example project all the way here at the bottom of the list. This is the raised crosswalk that I created recently based on a request from a user. I had posted a video to YouTube on how I made this. And just a reminder, if you go through the example project list and click on any of the names underneath the section or the example project it's referring to, it will pull up a YouTube video for how that was originally created. So feel free to check that out. Clicking that link is going to pull up a YouTube video of me showing you how I put that together. Next up to our changes are some new traffic settings. One of the key components here is the ability to show traffic stopping or pausing in lane. I'll walk you through some of that, but before I show you that, I will show you there are some other traffic shortcuts we've applied to our sections. So you can see we've got this use global traffic feature here when I select one of our sections. When I toggle that on, what that's going to do is show me all the global traffic settings that are populated here in your settings menu as well. So for instance, I can still apply a global traffic setting. Let's say I only want to see luxury vehicles, and I say use global traffic settings. This will only show me those luxury vehicles. But if I toggle that off and show all vehicles, I can set globally to use that global traffic, which would then toggle that on for all those individual sections. I can also say set global traffic none, and it will turn that check mark off for all those sections and go back to using the traffic library set for each of those sections. Another new traffic setting is the ability to adjust the volume of traffic in a lane. So you can see by default here, we've got one that's basically representative of a single vehicle coming through the section at a time. But we can adjust that volume on a section by section basis. We can use the spin bar to bring it down to 0, which would basically eliminate traffic or turn it off. Or we could crank that all the way up to 100, and we'll start to see multiple vehicles coming through this section at a time. That is somewhat speed dependent. It's also dependent on the frame rate of your computer. You'll see the traffic does try to balance when it is trying to move too fast in too high volume. There are some kind of stop-start issues. We can really see this benefit when we lengthen our section. If you're trying to create something more realistic, but a 500-foot long section or something approaching that length, it does look a little weird when we have lanes that have one vehicle at a time. So pulling that volume up will make your longer sections look a lot more realistic. There is also a global setting for this traffic. Over in our settings menu, we have the ability to globally adjust the speed of all our travel lanes, as well as the volume for those lanes. So instead of going lane by lane, you can go ahead and pull these sliders, click apply to all, and adjust speed and volume of those lanes. You can see we've got stop bars programmed in as I've got this bus coming to a stop in this bus lane. I'll show you how that's working. Again, in our section view dialog box, we've got some new features to toggle on use of a stop bar. If I turn the visualizer for that stop bar on, you can see I've toggled it on and it shows up there in the lane. So that is where the stopped traffic would come to a stop. I can also use a visualizer to toggle on a stop sign. The stop sign will come on when the timed stop is being programmed into the traffic control settings. So here, if a vehicle were to approach a stop sign, they would come to a stop. And you'll see there are some timing settings where it's currently cycling through, and when that toggles off, that stop sign will turn off. That's basically giving a green light for that paused traffic. Those are in also the settings menu. So down here, as I scroll down past our gender and ethnicity distribution of pedestrians, I can see my intersection timings pull down. So it's pretty well hidden away. It might be a good idea to go check for this the next time you're using it. I can toggle on globally whether I'm going to use this timer for my stop bar. And then I can also change the duration of my stages. So you can see here for this section, I am using the stop bar timing group 3. So when 3 is active, that stop sign goes away because that's basically the green light for that stage. And then for stages 1, 2, and 4, that stop sign will stay up. So you can see it's in 2, and when it bumps down to 3, I get 5 seconds of essentially a green light. And after 3, we get 5, 10, 15 more seconds of that stop sign. If you need to force or advance the intersection stage, we've got a button here that'll push through which stage you're in. So you can see I'm automatically adjusting which stage is active. You can add a stop bar to any of your lanes by in the traffic menu of your section dialog box toward the top. You can use a stop bar. You'll see it places a stop bar location on your lane. I can go ahead and use a visualizer for the stop sign and stop bar to see where it is. I can pull that forward or back using this spin bar. And then I can set which timing group I want to put that stop sign in between 1 through 4 at the spin bar below that. Finally, on these stop bars and stop signs, we do have some overrides for visualization. So you can see here, we are using the stop bar, but we do not see when that stop sign and stop bar is active. If I were to turn this visualizer for the stop bar on, and the stop sign on here in the section settings, you'll see those will both pop up. I can also turn those off here, but override those globally. So we do have some global override settings. If I wanted to show temporarily all my stop signs, maybe I'm trying to fine tune my staging timing or locations of stop bars, I can override these in the settings. And then maybe when it's time to cut a video and I don't want to see those globally, I can turn those off. So just a couple different ways to show that visualization of where your stop bars are in your model. A new 2.1 feature for our Pro users is the ability to cycle through multiple phases automatically. So you can see here in our phasing menu, we've got a new display auto phase checkbox. When that's toggled on, you can see it pops up this window next to our camera settings where we can enter in a second length interval to cycle through our phases in the project. So I'll go ahead and set this to 3 so you can see it moving a little bit quicker. But what that's doing then is moving through, in this example, the construction staging as we go through the north and south. You can see it's automatically moving down the list here. We can close this out. We can even turn off that display floating phases, and it'll continue to cycle through. So this can be really useful if you're in a meeting and want something constantly cycling through staging or concept alternatives as you're talking over them, or even eliminating some post-processing time with cutting videos. You know, instead of rendering a bunch of separate videos, you could toggle this on and record one long video that's automatically cycling through your typical section phases. Finally, I'm going to show you some of the new 3D assets that we've brought into Beyond Typicals 2.1. That's down here at the bottom of this asset list. Again, every time we add a 3D asset here, it's going to increase the download size of the patch. So we do try to keep this as tight as possible while accommodating as many users as possible, just so that we don't have these massive download and storage requirements for our computers. But we did add plenty of assets that I think will be really useful for our users moving forward. So we've got some detectable warning tiles. We've got some new signs and some large urban buildings. We've got a couple of static buses to place too. So I'll go ahead and create a flat median pad here, or a couple of them, make them nice and big, and just start placing these so we can take a tour of those assets. So there's some of the new assets. We've got a new church and a cafe building. We've got a couple of static buses, which will be useful to place maybe in a parking lane where we currently don't have that in our list of vehicular assets in the parking lane. We've got a new keep right sign, and then these detectable warnings. I'll show you, we've got a few different color options since we're not able to change the hue of these placed assets. We've got some larger tiles and smaller ones. keep in mind you can go ahead and select and adjust these. So you can see we can change the scale to fit our needs here. We can also rotate and move those around with some of our location and rotation settings. We've also got some smaller versions of these tiles. We've also got this detectable edge, which is becoming more prevalent in urban areas to delineate the space between a raised bikeway and an adjacent sidewalk. These are good for pedestrians that might be visually impaired and caning down the sidewalk so that they can feel the edge of the walkway and not inadvertently wander into the bike lane next to it. Similar to our other Place 3D assets, this is something that you can scale and rotate as you need it. For instance, I could see us lengthening this out and rotating it so that it's placed longitudinally down the section between the sidewalk and bikeway. You might have noticed I didn't add all of these new urban buildings. We've got 23 new urban buildings in these assets as well. The best way to look through these would be to attach a buildings large section to your model. You can see in the primary asset list, we can drop this down and take a look at some of these buildings. Keep in mind that they're not necessarily sized to repeat well, so you might have to play with spacing and offsets, and they don't necessarily match the preset 100-foot section width, but feel free to play around with this to get familiar with some of the new buildings that we have. And then I'd recommend, just because they don't work so well with this primary asset repeating asset placement, to go into the individual asset placement and turn on your placement mode, and all those 23 new buildings are also attached to the asset placement. So you can go ahead and place those manually on your section, rotate them, scale them as you like. You can place multiple ones for a section length and width that works for your project. So there you have it. Those are the new features available in version 2.1 of Beyond Typicals. I encourage you to go get the latest update from the Epic Games Launcher or going to www.beyondware.com/downloads. As always, if you have any questions, you can check out our website at beyondware.com or feel free to send me an email at brian@beyondware.com. Thanks for watching.